Hey there. Hey again. It is Sandra Walters, your writing coach. I am going to share my screen with you. Today, we're going to be talking about plot elements. Since you are writing about your personal story, for it to be interesting, you got to make sure that you have your plot elements. So that is what I'm going to share with you today. Hope that you are having an amazing day. If not, I hope that I can make it more amazing by giving you information on what you need to do in order to write your book. All right. The name of my publishing company is Our Inspiring Stories, and I absolutely love to hear people's stories. It gets me excited. All right. Again, my name is Sandra Walters, and I am your writing coach. Good news. Do you have any good news today? I'm thinking, do I have any more? Oh, I do. So tomorrow I get to go and set up in a grocery store and sell my book. So I'm excited about that. Thursday will be the first time that I do that. I will get to travel all over the state of Texas, sitting in a grocery store and selling my book, also offering my services to people. So I'm excited about that. It is 12 o'clock at night right now, or 12 o'clock in the morning. So I pray that I will be nice and fresh and happy. I'm a morning person. Happy when I show up tomorrow because I'm not too sleepy. But anyways, the great thing about being able to create your own schedule is I can get there when I want to. But my plan is to get there about 10:30. All right, so that is my good news. Okay, now, the interesting thing about plot is we typically think about the plot, or you can call it the storyline, when you go and you see a movie, and that's what determines whether or not you like a movie or whether or not you like a play, um, whether or not you like, something like that. And sometimes the complaint is sometimes with plays, it's like it doesn't have a plot or predictable storylines. It's like watching Lifetime. Lifetime is so predictable. You can always tell what's coming next. That's the great thing about writing a personal story is it's unpredictable because people can't typically guess what's going to happen next because it is so original to you. But when you look at um, certain networks, like Lifetime, you can pretty much predict what's going to happen. I would have to say I'm more of a reality type of person, although my husband thinks that they're predictable and it's made up too. But I like the re-dramatizations of things that happen for real because they're not as predictable, in my opinion. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to share some plot diagrams with you. And from those plot diagrams, you will see what the plot elements are. And so I've got two of them to share with you. I've got one that's real basic. So it's kind of an elementary style plot diagram. And then I have this one here. It's pretty basic too, but the other one is more basic than the other. All right, so the plot, your storyline. So when you are starting the story, and if you see where this arrow is here, when you're setting your story up, you give like the characters backgrounds. And that's what you would typically do in your first chapter. So in your first chapter, you're going to give a lot of that information Uh, you need a lot of that information. And depending on how you write your book, this actually could be your entire book. Does that make sense? But it would be one story. The thing about my book, I wrote a lot of different stories. So the reality is, I could use this plot diagram for every single chapter. And this is what makes it interesting. If your story doesn't do that, then it's a flatliner. And that means it's boring. So, anyways, you start off with the exposition, and the exposition is simply the setting. So it starts off somewhat laying the foundation, but you still are going to start with action or dialogue and something interesting to grab your reader's attention. Okay? All right. So oftentimes it starts with a conflict. And so what's the main problem? So it kind of gives a hint of it right in here. Then you have events that start happening. And that is the rise in action. And what the rise in action does, it rises to the climax, which is the most suspenseful moment. Okay, so this is like the most interesting part of this particular chapter. Okay, then after you get to the climax, then you have events which are the falling action, which should be coming to a resolution. So it's tapering off, about to end. And so then when you're done with that particular chapter, you should be able to say how it was resolved, or, okay, since this is really for like short stories, or you end with suspense so that you keep your reader reading. So it could be this, it ends, and it can end, but you got to leave a little bit suspense there so that your reader wants to continue reading. Okay, because yours is not just one paper or one story, it's several stories, because it's your life story, unless you're just telling one really long story of one thing. Okay, all right, now what I'm going to share with you is, so you see the little roller coaster. So at the beginning, you're things are gradually happening. And then you get to like the highest point, which is like a roller coaster. And when you get at that very top and you're looking down, and then that's what your climax is. Your climax is way up there. And that's the most interesting, the most suspenseful part of your story. And then it starts coming down because it's starting to end, it's starting to conclude. Okay? I hope that makes sense. Since you are writing an entire book, each chapter should do that. Okay? And that's what makes it interesting from chapter to chapter. And if you decide, okay, this particular piece of the story is not as interesting, you might want to put them in order based on how interesting things are, because you want your book as a whole to do the roller coaster. You don't want any flatliner places. You want it to do the roller coaster. So you might have to move some things around just for to embellish and to create suspense. Okay. And then as an author, you can explain to them, you know, how you did it, just like I'm explaining to you. Like my book, I had a lot of stories and they didn't all necessarily connect. They were just individual stories. So I took them and made them connect like it was one story, but they didn't really all necessarily connect. I made them connect based on what made sense to me. Okay. All right. So that is the plot elements. Oh, we didn't talk about, it didn't mention like the protagonist and the antagonist. You know, the protagonist is the main character, and the antagonist is usually, not usually, the antagonist is the villain in the story. I'm thinking, you know, I just mentioned, you know, when I'm the protagonist in my story, and the villain in my story, I would have to say is probably my mom and a little bit of my dad as well. So that's how my story goes. Okay. We did the plot diagrams. So now for homework, what you're going to do is make sure that all of the plot elements are included in your chapter. So the first chapter that you've written, make sure that you got that roller coaster thing going and not a flatliner thing going, so that you're sharing an interesting story. It should be, again, like a roller coaster, not a flatliner. So thank you so much for your time. See you next time. And I'm ending, but I thought I would show you the whole screen and not half of it. But anyways, I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and that is how you make sure that your story is interesting and that you have a plot, and that your story is interesting throughout the entire story and not just in bits and pieces here and there. I hope that you had a great time today and that you understand. If not, please just shoot me a message on the website and I will definitely get back with you. Have a great one. Thank you so much for your time. I appreciate you. Have a great rest of your day. Goodbye.